Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Occupation Story Up. Today we have our first healthcare occupation story, and we have Robert with us. And thank you for joining and coming on and letting us tell your occupation story, Robert.
Yeah, thanks for having
And
me, man. I appreciate it.
yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and what field you're in, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so I've been in the healthcare field for 25 years. Yeah, this year was 25 years. And the healthcare field that I belong to is laboratory. So medical laboratory. Been doing that for 25 years, took a little break, went into the other side of healthcare, which is practice management, and quickly found out that is I'm good at the lab. Practice management and just the doctor's office is it's a great opportunity. I did learn things that I wasn't exposed to before. But yeah, so I've been doing the lab for 25 years. Started as a lab assistant. I don't know if you want to get into schooling or any of those.
Yeah. Um, so if we so you're working in healthcare, you're working specifically in the lab.
Mhm.
Would that be like phlebotomy would be? Is
Yeah,
that how you start, or someone would get into that?
yeah. So there's multi levels for the laboratory. You can go down the route of phlebotomy, which is kind of, it's, I don't want to say entry level, but it kind of is. And phlebotomy is basically, for those that obviously don't know what the term means, it's taking blood. It's basically drawing patients. We get orders from the doctors, and we basically take whatever labs that the physician's ordering. It does require a certain skill set because you're actually putting a needle in someone's arm, whether it's the arm or the hand. So that's one segment of the lab. The other segment is actually going into the laboratory sciences, where you are actually analyzing the blood that the phlebotomists they collect.
Okay, so that's interesting. So there's like almost like the frontline workers who are doing the blood draw, right? And then there's a totally different group of folks in the back doing the lab analytics on the blood. Um, have you worked in both?
I have, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So it's interesting you put analytics because within the laboratory there's um, three departments or three categories. There's pre-analytical, which is the phlebotomist, and logistics. There's the analytical, which is the laboratory scientists that are actually running the labs and running chemistry panels, special chemistries. And then there's
okay,
post-analytical, which is the reporting side of those actual results. And I've
okay,
both. I haven't done the reporting. Actually done the reporting side as well.
okay. So how did you get into this field? Take us back to, were you like out of high school and like, man, I need to get into a career, or how did that
That
transpire?
that's funny. I mean, it's really bizarre how I got into the lab because I say that because I have needle phobia.
Mm,
So every time, as far as back as I can remember, if I was getting my blood drawn, they would have to lay me down because I was passing out every single time. And so, I thought to myself, and I don't know if I actually consciously thought at the time, but I was always drawn to healthcare in the sense of um, the blueprints of the body, which is
okay,
labs. That gives you everything that a provider needs to run his diagnosis, his treatment, identify certain things that are happening with the body. That starts within the laboratory. Um, so I was always fascinated with that. And thinking back now, I think uh, the Lord just kind of put it on me to conquer that fear, right? So that was a fear that I had. I didn't want to be around needles. I didn't want to be around a blood. If I seen blood, that was just like game over. Um, and so I just went to school. I went to laboratory assistant school, and I just got immersed in it, man. Being able to see, not see it from an emotional perspective in terms of fear, but seeing it from like a scientific or a objective, hey, this is what it is.
Sure.
You're a part of something that is greater than what you even think. So I started in school, and I did that for, it was a year and a half, almost 2 years. Well, it'd be 2 years with clinicals.
Was that like at a community college type?
So no, it was actually a technical school. And this was in, I'm going to date myself, in the 90s. So, Flintstone was my, my classmate. But no, it was in the late 90s. They offered this particular course that they don't offer anymore. They still offer phlebotomy. So it was a combination of laboratory assistant and phlebotomy.
Okay.
So I did that for 2 years, including my clinicals.
Interesting. Okay. Um, no, that's pretty cool. Okay, so did you start after you finish so you finish your training and then what?
So after that, you do your clinicals, and unfortunately, I was in the PICU.
The
So
what?
PICU, so it's a pediatric care.
Okay, okay, okay.
I actually, this is back when I lived in California, and I can't remember the hospital, but it was down in Oxnard somewhere, and I was doing my extern, my clinicals there, and it was, you come from school where you you have a kind of a book approach to things,
Sure.
and you kind of look from it from a like pedagogical, like you're being taught, and then you go into not just like family medicine, right? Family medicine, you're dealing with adults. You can have conversations with your patients, but you're going into pediatric care. And that was extremely difficult. Especially, in phlebotomy, it is a challenge to draw um, healthy adults. Then you scale that back, and now you're drawing pediatrics. So that was, I was kind of thrown into the fire there. But it
Yeah, I
was
can see how that would be challenging.
Oh, it was a great experience, because I was able to identify and really understand that when you're dealing with pediatrics, you are not dealing with just one patient. You have two audiences, right?
Sure.
You have the parents who are watching you like a hawk, like I would be.
Yeah.
You have to be able to, you know, uh, comfort the parent, breed confidence in your ability, and you're doing that right out of school. So that was, I don't, fortunately, I did that for a month, and then I went over to, basically family health. But again, for that 1 month, it felt like it was a year.
Yeah, I can see how that would be really tough. I mean, just having kids of my own and having to see them get stuck and get blood drawn. And me myself having been drawn before where the person kept missing the vein and they're just chasing the vein and you're just feeling lightheaded, sweaty.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
it's not fun.
Yeah. We call that fishing, and that's a no-no. We're not supposed to. Once you insert the needle, if you're not able to secure a sample, then you terminate the draw and you start somewhere else. But fishing is where yeah, that's something
I
that we
remember that.
encourage. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not fun. Okay, so you spent a month working in pediatrics, and then you went over to just practical family.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a different, I did the rest of my externship at a kind of a clinic. The clinic was a family doctor, and that was pretty straightforward. I mean, it still has obviously its challenges, especially being out of school, but I think that the pediatric experience that I gained helped me to better interact with the patients, more from a compassionate side,
Sure.
more sympathetic, and once I was done with my clinicals, I got a job at a large family practice back home in Palmdale, California. And that office was pretty, I mean, it was pretty big. Now, what was unique about that office, and it kind of ties into the question that you asked earlier about like different settings or, what different types of classifications are in the lab, whether it's phlebotomy or laboratory assistant or a lab tech. In in the phlebotomy world, laboratory world, you have different work settings. So you can work at a doctor's office where basically draw your samples and then you send them out to a lab. This particular doctor's office, my first like real job in terms of healthcare, they had their own laboratory located within the doctor's office. It's called a POL, which is a physician's office laboratory.
Okay.
And that to me, that was awesome because I already had my training for laboratory tech assistant. So I was like, all right, I'm going to actually get some bench work. Bench work is
Yeah.
where you're actually working on with the analyzers and they're on a bench.
Can I
So
pause you for a second?
yeah,
So is that common, or did you just happen to be at the right place at the right time to where like somebody who gets into this field as a traditional phlebotomist drawing blood um, may not work at a place that has a built-in lab, right? And
yeah,
so they don't get to be like, hey, can I go do what those guys are doing?
yeah,
Um,
yeah. So, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but I come at this from a Christian worldview. Um, and to answer your question, it is a shot in the dark, really, to get a
mm,
situation like that. And I just believe that the Lord knew my heart and he knew what my desires would be and where it was at that time. And that he opened up the opportunity. I mean, the doors that are open by him, and the doors that are closed by him.
hmm
So I had two job offers. One was for a reference lab, and the other was for this POL. And the reference lab was just a draw center, and I didn't really want to do that. I actually wanted to do some bench work, and the Lord created this opportunity for me, and I started there in 2001. It was actually ironically just just after 9/11.
Oh wow,
Yeah. 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 So I did
it's
that for when I started, I thought that I was just going to be able to get on the bench and, just have, awesome experience. No, the facility already had lab techs and they were just hiring for a phlebotomist.
okay.
And so I was basically doing all the phlebotomy work, and it was just I was the only phlebotomist there, and we had an urgent care, family practice, and then we also had an OBGYN all attached to the same doctor's office. And um, shortly after I was hired, I want to say maybe 6 months, the lab tech was going out on maternity leave, and that created the opportunity for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
And so was there a lot of on the job training, or did you have to go through more like external training to be like, hey, if you want to work here, we have to send you out and get this other training, or we're going to train you inside it?
No, it was basically, the it was on the job. The training that I got at school prepared me for some of the bench work that I would be interacting with, but every instrument is different, right? So every analyzer is different in terms of how you operate the analyzers, the QC, which is quality controls, the calibrations that you have to run prior to running samples, how long those calibrations are good for. So once the 2 months in, the lab tech started to bring me upstairs. The upstairs was where the laboratory was located. Downstairs is where all the doctors were and the myself. And after I would do my morning draws, so typically in phlebotomy, with most jobs, Anthony, you're able to kind of ease into your day, right? You start at 8 o'clock, you get your computer up, or, you start stocking the shelves and you're waiting for the patients, right? Or you're waiting for your clientele, you're waiting for the customers. In phlebotomy, you don't have that opportunity. 70% of all of our patient volume is before noon.
Wow.
Fasting. People are fasting,
Ah,
you know? So when when they're fast, 9 times out of 10, depending on the specialty, but 9 times out of 10, labs need to be drawn when the patient is fasting to get the accurate results. So once I was done with my morning draws, I would go up and then she would start showing me, hey, this is the one analyzer for chemistry panels, another analyzer for special chemistry. We did hematology, allergy testing, all the good stuff there. So, and it was considered, we're regulated by different agencies.
Hmm.
And we were regulated by CLIA, and we were a moderate complexity lab, which means that we weren't just a lab that did like automated testing or wave testing. We were actually moderate complexity in that we were actually a little bit more detailed and comprehensive than just wave testing.
Okay. Man, this is a fascinating subject to me. That I have a lot of questions, um, but I want to let you talk.
No, I mean,
uh,
ask away, man.
no, no, no. I want you to keep walking through. So you get this opportunity to work in the lab now, and so what happens from there? How long do you do that?
Oh, well, so she went out and I actually took over both responsibilities. So they didn't backfill my position.
Okay,
Yeah. So, I would get there around 6 in the morning and I would start all of the analyzers. And when you start your analyzers, it's not just like, you just turn a button on, right? And everything's good to go. You actually have to run controls, and your controls are based upon what you're testing. So, like, say for instance, everybody kind of is familiar with cholesterol panels, right?
sure.
So a cholesterol panel, you would have to run your controls off every single test within a cholesterol panel.
So is that like a calibrate? I have to calibrate for each test I'm going to do.
Yeah, so calibrations is different. Calibration is so you can calibrate your analytes, and depending on the analyte that you're testing, your calibrations would hold for like 30, 60 days. So you don't have to run calibrations anymore until they expire. But your controls, you have to run controls every single day just to make sure that you're on target.
Okay,
Yeah. So you have to run controls prior to running any patient. So I would go in the morning, run all my controls. That typically takes around an hour, hour and a half, and that's without any issues. And in the lab, there's always issues. Um,
equipment malfunctions, stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if the controls are off, so you do have to have you have to be so maybe for those who are interested in doing something like that, um, you have to have some level of statistical math,
Okay,
because you have to establish a mean, you have to establish a standard deviation, and you have to establish two standard deviations. So, with every single analyte that you're running, it needs to be within, and the manufacturer will tell you if it's within one standard deviation or two standard deviations, it's still within normal limits. If
that's
it falls,
funny.
yeah, yeah,
It's funny because like I'm trying to think. Sorry to interrupt you, but like even myself and my kids, like, why do I need to learn this? I'm never going to use this.
yeah,
As soon as
yeah,
you said I had to learn this math, I'm like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
there's a job where you
Yeah,
use
I
it.
mean, it's super relevant, especially because, in the lab, when you're actually running these various tests, it's they're laboratory scientists. They're CLS, clinical laboratory scientists. Now, I wasn't a CLS because I didn't go to that level of education and schooling for that. If someone's interested in becoming a CLS, that's a 4-year program. And after the 4 years, you will then transition to um, more of a laboratory concentrated field. And there are certain schools that offer CLS programs. So yeah, it is. It's a great field. Um, so I would go after all that's done. I would go downstairs and then draw all of my patients for the morning. And once all the patients were drawn, I take those samples, take them upstairs, and then I'll run them on the analyzers. So it was really it's a full day. There was really no time for leisure. That's not a typical scenario, because oftentimes you have phlebotomists collecting the blood, and then you have your lab techs actually running um, the test itself.
But you since you were dual hatted, right? You were doing
I
both.
was doing both, yeah, yeah. And then as the practice expanded, we started to have a need for additional phlebotomists, and at that point, I was promoted to assistant laboratory supervisor, and that's about a year and a half in. So I went from entry level phlebotomy, then went into wearing two hats, doing phlebotomy in the morning, running the test in the afternoon. That created an opportunity for me to be promoted as assistant laboratory supervisor, and that's a different within that space. I was I was mainly doing all the bench work and then supervising the phlebotomist downstairs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you did that, and then um, is that different from what you're doing now?
Oh
I think
yeah,
you said you've been in the field for 25 years.
yeah, yeah. So we moved out of California in 2010, and it was just a mass exodus out of California, right? So moved out of California in 2010, and I started with a reference lab out here in Texas, and I've been
Okay.
with that lab ever since. I've been with it for 15 years. And that's a different environment, work environment, because I do not I don't do any bench work. Um, I used to supervise phlebotomist, but as of earlier this week, I promoted to territory manager.
Okay. Awesome.
So now my direct reports are
Congrats on that.
supervisors. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Now, and I was driving to Dallas every day. Well, it's a hybrid position, so I can work from home, but then I would have to go in and visit my clients. Um, but now I get closer to home. I'm a territory manager of Fort Worth, which hasn't happened yet. I mean, it's on paper. I'm hoping by, I don't know, next couple months that I will be transitioning here to Fort Worth.
Very cool. Very cool. So now you said it's a regional manager for this
Yeah, it's a territory manager. So
territory manager.
yeah, I report to the regional manager.
Okay.
My territory is all of Fort Worth, which if some of your listeners are from Texas, Fort Worth specifically, it goes all the way down to Waco, as far west as Abilene, and I go up to Wichita Falls and everything in between. So I have 7 supervisors reporting to me, and each supervisor has at least 35 employees. So that's about, what, 300 indirect reports that I will have
Wow, that's
across
pretty
the department.
substantial.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Very cool. No, that's awesome. Sounds like a successful career for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank God, man.
as
Praise God.
Yeah, thank God, right? He gives us these abilities, opens these doors for us, and allows us to support our families.
Yeah, and it doesn't
So,
a
oh, go
hiccup.
ahead.
It doesn't come without hiccups. Um, in my earlier days, I didn't really um take the job seriously. Um, I you know, even I was a professing Christian at that time, and I just felt like my view of work was more like what's obligatory. It's just
Mm,
something I have to do, right? And hasn't been up until a few years ago where I realized that this is a um, this is something good. Working is good. Working is biblical.
mhm.
Because I always felt like the concept of work was a curse, right? And as I started to, God was dealing with me and opening up my understanding in terms of more of a deeper theological approach to even work. I started to really realize that work isn't a curse, it's the toil of work, right? In Genesis chapter
Yeah.
3. I mean, work was always something that God had given us. We were always called to be productive, and God blesses that level of production. And I think about, Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 10:31, whatever you do, do it for the glory of God. And it wasn't until I started to realize that me, you know, waking up every morning, going to work, and having the object of that work be the glory of God and not my bank account,
Hmm.
not the titles that I was pursuing, trying to, climb the corporate ladder. Um, I think that changed. And in fact, I know that changed because it started to be evident in just the output that I was giving to my employer. Um, and the precision of my works or my work and all those things, it all kind of came together once I realized that I am called to work and it's a good thing and God blesses your work.
Yeah.
Once you have him as a focal point as far as what you do every single day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And that's kind of one of the things I wanted to bring out on this channel. Hopefully, it comes out is that I find it very interesting. I've always thought how before I even started this channel, how I can look around at all these different occupations, healthcare, military, law enforcement, the janitor,
Mhm.
folks, picking up your trash. I'm like, man, God brings all these different people together, different skill sets, different desires, and we all come together and make a functioning society.
Right,
How does that happen?
right, right.
Um, and I'm like, well, it can't happen without God being behind it, right? And so part of this platform is um, how do we honor God in our occupations? In that is what we're doing is what we are doing God honoring. Um, and that are we using the skills that he gave us to the best of our abilities and you know working hard for him and doing good for our neighbors and our community and just being providers for our family, right?
Yeah, you bring up a good point, bro. Because we live in a cultural context that is often comparing itself to one another, right? You have the idea of keeping up with the Joneses, right? This facade of success. And what does success really look like? And again, from a Christian worldview, success looks like submission. It looks like submitting to God in all that you do, acknowledging him in all of your ways. There was a theologian back in the 16th 15th century that really in similar to our context in Geneva, people were putting a high premium on jobs that people respected, and everyone was pursuing that one thing, right? They were pursuing status, and this theologian says the person that um, is a shoemaker, he's the shoemaker, and he does it to the glory of God. So there was a shift in like the way people viewed employment and careers, and it shifted from individualism to the community, what you're just alluding to, right?
Yeah,
How does our individual jobs contribute to the overall health of society and community? And it's not just the CEOs, but it's the janitor, or it's the guy that's doing landscaping or whatever it is. It's not the title itself, it's how it contributes to the greater society as a whole. And as a Christian, I see that as God opening up those opportunities, and God honors these things
yeah,
regardless of your title, regardless of your.
sure. There's a book I have it on my reading list that I need to get to. It's called The Doctrine of Work, and it kind of talks about what we're talking about here. And it's not necessarily that for the folks listening. Um, I just want you to understand if you work in an honest occupation. One of the things that I um, am kind of for this channel is I want to have jobs on here that I would recommend my son or daughter, my niece or nephew to as a career. And so that's why I'm kind of categorizing these as God honoring occupations. An occupation I would be proud for them to work in, whether they're a janitor or a truck driver, military. Maybe they are a CEO. As long as it's good, honest work, hey, we'd love to have you come on board and tell your story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's another book that over, within those that same line. It's by David Bonson. It's called Full Time. It's the work and the meaning of life, and he pulls out some of these things that we've been talking about today, specifically about work is not a curse.
Yeah.
That God has blessed those. I mean, Adam's job in the garden was to be fruitful and multiply and produce, right?
Hmm.
And again, it, I don't think for me it's not just the occupation, but it is um, the way in which is done.
Sure. Yeah. Um, like to your point earlier, if if we look at our occupation, I'm going to work for the Lord. Or
Mhm.
work do my work to the Lord. It changes everything. You're not like you said. You're not striving to climb that corporate ladder. Promotions are great. It'll happen when it happens, right? It's kind of out of my control. But for now, I'm just gonna put my head down and do what's in front of me to the best of my abilities, and just keep going.
Right, right, right.
No, that's good. That's good. So so what would you tell somebody who's interested in getting into the field of so phlebotomy and lab, are they now two separate tracks?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, typically they is as of post 2000, right? They are well defined in terms of the two different distinct tracks. So phlebotomy would be, you would go to school for to be a phlebotomist. You know, I don't know how long the school is, to be honest with you. Some schools vary in terms of clinical hours. They have classroom hours, and then they have clinical hours. And then they have so many successful venipunctures. Venipunctures is the actual stick.
Sure.
So yeah, there's two different tracks. If someone is really just interested in, I'll tell you the difference between the two, Anthony. So the phlebotomist is patient facing, right? So if you enjoy being around people, you enjoy the interactions that you have with people, and knowing that that interaction that you have with that person is assisting in their healthcare and their treatment, phlebotomy is for you. It really is, because you have that firsthand in the trenches with our patients, and you start developing relationship with our patients, and you start to have a level of compassion that um, you didn't realize that you had before. Patients, we have conversations with patients, and patients will allow us into that space of what's going on in their life. I've had countless patients when I was doing phlebotomy share with me that they just got some horrible news by their doctor,
Oh, wow.
and the reason why they're in my chair is to
Yeah,
confirm
makes
this news.
sense.
You know,
Yeah.
so it is it's sobering. It's very sobering. It's rewarding. I mean, it's super rewarding. I
Sure.
don't wanna just paint this picture of, like, gloom and doom, right? But it is super rewarding to know that you are participating in the overall healthcare of that patient. And then for the lab tech, it's not patient facing, you know? You don't interact with patients, but you are interacting with their lives, and that's in the, form of their sample. So
So let me ask you something there real quick. As a lab tech, are you just getting the results, the not the results, the sample, and no context around it, and just say, "Hey, look at this and tell me." Okay, okay,
yeah, and that's the beauty of it too, Anthony,
yeah,
because there are times where, when I was doing bench work, I will run just say a CBC. A CBC is a complete blood count, right? The main components to a CBC are your white blood cells, your red blood cells, your hemoglobin, and your platelets. Your platelets are your clotting factors, not factors, but they're your clotting cells. And I will run a CBC, and I was doing it for so long, I can almost predict what the diagnosis would be. So if you have a low hemoglobin of a 6, that patient's going in to get a blood transfusion. If the white blood cells were, out of, off the charts high, there's something really happening with that patient. Or liver enzymes. You got ALT, AST. If your ALT is elevated, I can almost guarantee you're on cholesterol medication. If everything else was healthy, if you were overall healthy, so you get
Sure.
to see again, and that's why I mentioned it in the beginning, the blueprint of the body. You get to see what's
Yeah.
internally.
That's really cool. I'm sure you get a lot of A1C type tests as well, right?
Yeah, 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 and that depending on you know, um, we now at the company I work for now, A1Cs unfortunately is a common test. Um, an A1C basically is it measures your level of glucose that you have in your system for the over the last 3 months, I believe. So it's how your body breaks down glucose. That's the indicator of an A1C. And unfortunately, we do have a concern in our country in terms of diabetes, and so we get to see that, and we get to see, cholesterol that is give you a little glimpse as to what this looks like. So when we draw our patients, we draw them off. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen it. One of those tubes, it's like, what we call a tiger top, which is orange and black, and it has a little gel berry on the bottom.
Uh-huh.
And we place that in a centrifuge. A centrifuge spins, has so many revolutions, about 3,300, and that separates the red blood cells. And that serum that was on the bottom now it goes on the center, and it keeps the red blood cells down on the bottom of the tube. And what you have left is serum. And your serum should be a hay color, like straw. It should be kind of yellowish, right? And I've seen it to where, especially when I was working the bench, when we spin down that sample, when it comes up to me, it looks like, do you remember Nestle Quick, the strawberry Nestle Quick?
Yeah.
It looks basically strawberry, or it looks like milk. And the problem with that is it's filled with lipids, and lipids is your cholesterol. So we would have to dilute that sample before we can even put it on the analyzer, because the analyzer wouldn't even register what those lipids would be.
Is that just like somebody with off the charts cholesterol?
Off the charts. Yeah, off the charts. And one of my patients back in California, because you get to know these patients, you would not know that this patient had high cholesterol. He was just genetically dispositioned to high cholesterol.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, doesn't your body naturally just produce most of your cholesterol?
Yeah, so some of it is genetic, right? You got genetic disposition, and then you also have your diet, right? How your body breaks down fats.
Disclaimer: I'm not a medical professional, so anything
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
say,
yeah,
don't
yeah.
take it for
Disclaimer.
granted.
Yeah, yeah. Disclaimer. This is just based upon
we're just chatting here.
we're just chatting on, so don't take any medical advice from us.
Yeah,
But yeah, basically, it's how
especially
your
me.
body breaks it down.
Okay. And so, can you elaborate on? So that's for the. So what would you guys? You said you have to dilute that. What does that look like?
So depending on the analyzer, so everything is based upon the analyzer that you're using. So it would have a certain ratio of solution that you would actually place into the sample itself, and then you place that onto the analyzer. So it's all dependent upon the analyzer that you're
Okay, so
using.
it handles all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but again, if anyone's interested in this field, as I hope it sounds pretty interesting as to what we've been talking about. I mean, And at the end of the day, what you do as a phlebotomist or lab tech is that you're partnering with the provider to provide exceptional care to your patient. And you're not going to be thanked. It's kind of a thankless job because you're behind the scenes, right?
Yeah, that's
So
true.
no one sees you, especially if you're doing bench work. If you're a phlebotomist, you're really not even going to be thanked anyway because nobody wants to see you.
Yeah,
Well, I always tell my team, you're already behind the 8 ball when you have that patient in your chair because they don't want to be there.
sure. So, like, question on that though is when you guys do your analysis, are you writing up a diagnosis, or are you just writing up what you see based off of what's there? Do you give any recommendation, or are you just saying, hey, based off of this? How does that work? Because I've always wondered when I go see my doctor, right? Doctor say, hey, based off your lab results, you're pre-diabetic or you have high cholesterol. Who makes that decision as far as the diagnosis? I understand the doctor he's the doctor, right? But do you guys give like a recommendation based off what you're seeing?
So, um, hard answer, no, as far as diagnosis, right? So the diagnosis only comes from your healthcare provider, whether that's a physician assistant, nurse practitioner, or MD. Now, there has there have been times where um, I would meet with my providers on a monthly basis, um, and they would ask me certain questions regarding new testing that are coming out. They're seeing patients exhibit, this symptom, or they've heard about a certain test, and then we have dialogue regarding that. Other times, just on a daily basis, I would have a provider call, and they would ask, "Hey, based upon these symptoms, what do you think? What do you recommend?" And we give a recommendation as to, okay, well, like say for instance, a patient now. Uh, this is a um, it this is an extreme, but patient is having some cramps, possible like chest pain. What would you recommend? Well, what's called a high sensitivity C reactive protein, or this patient is having some bruising. Um, do you recommend a PT, an INR, or PT, INR, and PTT?
Okay.
Just like
So they,
recommend.
they would recommend the test. So they would consult you and say, hey, what kind of test should we order
Yeah, yeah,
for this patient?
not often,
Yeah.
but on some occasions, they will consult with their lab tech. It's kind of like not in the same vein, but similar, the pharmacy, right? The doctors will consult with the pharmacist as to, and get their input regarding a particular medication and the dosage and the frequency of that medication.
That's cool. Man, it's such a fascinating field to me because I mean, your blood, Scott's, and I'm just speaking from ignorance. There's so much information in there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That you can study and
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like, it's not forensics, right? But it is you're almost like a detective of sorts because you're looking at these clues. You get a report, and then you see all of these like indicators as to what's happening, and you get to see a kind of a panoramic of what's happening with that particular patient. And it's just a fascinating way of like approaching healthcare, and then to know that that was so critical. So, in other words, a doctor cannot diagnose properly without the lab.
sure. So, like, if a patient comes in and I don't know, they think they're having issues with their kidneys,
Mhm.
um, you guys can look at the blood and say, no, it's working perfectly. And how often, like, what room of error is there for like false positives?
So a majority of um if we ever had a question regarding a test, right? So one of the things that we take into consider is this is on POLs. POLs because you're because of where you're located, you're next door to the doctor. So you can have that level of communication and partnership. So if there was ever a hint of doubt regarding a result, we will send that out to another lab for comparative studies or
Okay.
confirmation. So we'll send it out to another lab just to confirm that what we have and those are rare occurrences. Um, yeah, there's always a possibility of a erroneous result, but it's not just the laboratory, it's how the patient was collected, right? So I'll give you an example. So we have a test, a lactic acid test, um, and the phlebotomist cannot put a tourniquet on the arm because once you put a tourniquet on the arm, it produces your lactic acid,
Sure.
so it's going to give you a false positive, right? And then we have other tests that you're not able to put alcohol on the actual site because it's it will contaminate the results. So all this is contingent upon what they do and how they do it, the phlebotomist, which is why it's so important. Again, it is a important field because what we do will give you an accurate picture or not.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, can you guys? I'm sure I don't know the answer, but you guys have the ability to look and say, "Hey, this person's probably is gonna has issues with this organ based off of these blood results."
Yeah, so like you brought up the kidneys, right? So and again, this is not healthcare advice. This is just
Sure.
things that
Yeah, we're just spitballing here.
we're just spitballing and based upon what we've seen before, what I've seen before in my work history. But if someone is having kidney issues, what will be elevated is your BUN and creatinine. So your BUN is blood urea nitrogen, and those are proteins that are being should be filtered by your kidney, right? So, like your kidney and your liver, those are filtering organs, right? So, your kidney should be filtering your BUN and creatinine. If it's not, then your BUN and creatinine is high. And then that's an indicator that something going on. Again, as a lab tech, all we can say is something's happening now. We don't
Yeah, yeah,
because we're not the provider. We're not having that conversation with the patient. We don't know their patient history, their family history. We can just call it the way we kind of see it. We can just say, "Hey, something ain't right about that," you know?
Do
Uh,
you ever like take snapshots of your own blood and just to see where your health is at?
yeah, well, yeah, I mean, when I
I
get my
would I would
labs
I
done
would do that.
yeah, when I get my labs done, I'm like, I'm looking at those things, and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and, I am blessed because, so far my labs have been great. And it's also, you know, once you're in this field, I think it's like anything else, right? But I'll constantly get calls from like my family members, and they're
I could
like,
see that.
"Hey,
What does this mean?
what is," and they'll send me a screenshot of the results, and I'm like, "Listen, all I can tell you is what may be happening and what organ or what situation may be happening, but you have to follow up with your healthcare provider because I can't diagnose you. I could just tell you, hey, if your ALT and AST is elevated in alcohols, there's probably your liver is maybe under stress or there's something going on there."
Yeah, because
Um,
like you said, you don't know how they drew their blood, if they could have messed something up, right?
right, right.
And so
Especially if
there's
you
a
have,
lot of variables,
yeah,
um, that could be in play, and so, without context around it, you're just looking at numbers.
yeah, exactly. Yep.
Oh, that's super cool. I mean, I can keep going for a while with different questions. This is a super fascinating subject to me, but I want to be conscious of your times. Kind of bringing the story to a close will be anything you want to tell somebody who's interested in getting into this field. I know we've covered a lot. You probably said what you wanted to say already, but if there's anything else that you have maybe you want to mention?
No, just again, if you're the type of person that is interested in people, right? Because you have to have, I think that's a prerequisite in terms of when you get into healthcare. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people that are getting into the healthcare field that do not have that prerequisite, and it shows, right?
Sure.
In terms of patient care, bedside manner,
Yeah.
the whole nine yards. But if you are one that you care about people and you want to be of service to your community, I think this is a great career choice for you. And again, you can start off as a phlebotomist And if that piques your interest, and if I have phlebotomists on my team now who are going to tech school, because they kind of got their feet wet, they got their foot in the door, and now they're like, I actually want to go on the other side of it. I
Sure.
want to be the one that's actually running the tests, because I think that's fascinating. So it is a great career for you to either start a building block for another opportunities. And I've had phlebotomists that have been phlebotomists for 30 years on my team. So it is a good career. It is a great career. And I would also say this, you you are a part of a greater organism, a greater community when you are in healthcare. And you do open up doors, as I mentioned, with family members calling you and asking your medical opinion, but there is something to that it's extremely satisfying. And the other thing I would say is, if my career choice was predicated upon me conquering a fear. So, and it doesn't have to be healthcare. It could just be anything, any field that you want to get into. Don't allow uncertainty and fear to chart your own course. I put my trust and my hope in the Lord, and I asked Him to bless the things that I was going to do, because I was going at it blind and I was going at it with an immense amount of fear. 25 years later, I'm a territory manager. I love what I do, and I do it as unto the Lord. And when you have Christ as the epicenter of your life, it's not going to be a bed of roses. I'm not trying to,
Sure.
but you have recourse and you have hope, and you have an advocate that sticks to you closer than a brother. And he will open up doors that you didn't even realize was there, and he'll close other doors. So say all that to say, put your trust in him, and uh, don't don't be afraid to launch out and see what God can do in your life.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for jumping on here, Robert, and sharing your occupation story. If you know anybody, those listening who have a interesting occupation story, please reach out. We'd love to hear it. And thanks to everybody for listening in. And God bless you guys.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.